How'd your bike ride go on Saturday, by the way?
It was
Saturday.
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was so much fun. It really was. It was, it was really invigorating. Really invigorating. I did 4 cycles and 4 gigs in one day, and it was just, I loved it.
So you just
people went... were great. It was a great way to connect with people, and I just had it. Well, what was really interesting about it was that I thought I'd be completely exhausted, but actually, in the end, I was totally invigorated and kind of almost high. It was great.
So did you just go from town to town then, or suburb to suburb within Dublin, and then stop off at different places and do your gigs?
Yeah, and play, and we had it all planned beforehand, so there were audiences everywhere.
Yeah,
and it was just great. It was so much fun. People are just great, People are just so open these days. There's some kind of openness, but I'm noticing in Dublin now there's just this great openness to try things, and that was my feeling on the day, was that there was just this great. I think you can try things differently now, and like we live in a different world, and the music world, like every other world, has changed so dramatically. That you have to be resourceful, and that's what this was about.
Well, I think that's true about everything. I mean, we're in there's a new normal now, and everybody has to adapt or perish, basically.
Yeah, that is very, very true. That is very, as a friend of mine said to me with more colourful language than I'll use recently, that anybody who thinks they're in some kind of comfort zone is in serious trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So those that can think on their feet and adapt to new ways and change will survive, and those that can't, we're going to go down. But the new normal is what we're in right now, and it's not going to change anytime soon. No,
and there's good and bad in that.
But as in everything. But we'll focus on the good. So tell me about... I want to try. I could talk to you about so many things and would like to, but I'll try and restrict it more or less to the new album. But I do just have to touch briefly on your experience traveling in Australia with the Dalai Lama and what that was like, and what it was like to be in his presence, and how that experience was for you.
Well, it's not an inappropriate question to ask, even in the context of the record, because even though I very consciously dismissed all professional-related ideas from my mind in going there, because I knew that this was an experience that had nothing to do with my career. It was an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow, and to just observe the movement and the amazing nature of the man that is the Dalai Lama. And it was the beauty of it for me was that I was asked to go because of a song. It was a song that resulted in the invitation as I waved goodbye, which is the song that I wrote about his departure from Tibet in 1959. I wrote the song 10 years ago, and in my own Australian tour in March last year, I met 2 Buddhist nuns who were on the team bringing the Dalai Lama to Australia last year, and they asked me would I like to come and sing this song before he spoke every night for 3 weeks. And it was a mind-blowing invitation, unlike anything I've ever experienced. And it was good that I completely removed myself from the professional kind of headset and just got into the flow of being with these people and observing the way Tibetan refugees are, and the way people are with the Dalai Lama, and then to listen to him. And what was really beautiful about it, there were many beautiful things about it, but obviously I knew I wasn't going to have any personal, FaceTime with the man himself, because his schedules were so intense and he was constantly surrounded by people, so I didn't mind that. I didn't need that or want that. But what I wasn't prepared for was the amount of time I had just hanging out with Tibetans, just being with Tibetan monks and Tibetan refugees in Australia, and that was the icing on the cake for me. Just marvelous people and very generous-minded people, very spirited people, very kind people, and gave me a sense of what it was like for Irish exiles around the world for hundreds of years, and the Tibetans are now going through for the last 50 years what Irish people went through for centuries. And it was a very tragic and interesting insight for me to get, that was. But when the experience was over, I came home, and I don't really fully understand this yet, but I know that I don't think I'd have made this album. I think the album that I've ended up with, This New Morning, I actually don't think it would have happened were it not for the visit to Australia. I mean, I had no intentions of making an album last year, but there was something sort of shifted in my writing when I came back that quite quickly I found myself in a really positive flow of writing so by the time I got to November, I realized, hang on a second, a lot has happened this year, and you've written these songs, and these are songs about things that are happening today in the world, and this album needs to be recorded now, not in 2 years' time. You need to do it now. And there you go.
Well, now I'm glad to hear you say that, because I didn't want to put that kind of a label on the album, but in listening to it, I felt an influence, perhaps, of that experience in there. It's a very mindful album in a lot of ways. I think, and it is very contemporary. I had the same feeling. It's stuff that's happening right here and right now, but there's a mindfulness to it that, particularly in certain songs and topics, that seem to just maybe have had a little bit of that reflection, maybe influence it. So you just sort of validated that feeling maybe a little bit.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I can't really give you an honest intellectual appraisal of the question, because I just don't analyze these things. I try to live them as much as I can and just be with them and not analyze them or think about them. Or I haven't actually thought that much about what did that experience of being in Australia for 3 weeks with the Dalai Lama and his entourage. I've never sat down and asked myself that question, because I don't want to. I'd rather just carry on with my work and allow whatever happened at that time, as with other things that happen, to just come through in the spirit of the songs and not be too, intellectual or analytical. Or
Sure.
It's not really what I'm interested in.
Sure, but it's just a flavor. Every album seems to have its own flavor and its own vibe to it, and this one has a vibe that's different from the others, which are different from the others. But it just sort of seems to have that sort of vibe to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the point of making records at all. I don't think the world needs any more new music. I'm not interested in making records for the sake of making records, and I still am very much in love with the process of this dying art and phenomenon of making an album and releasing songs in this format. But I'm a fan of it and I love it. And at the same time, I recognize that there's a hell of a lot of music in the world, and that there actually is no real need for any more new albums, unless there's a reason for that album to exist. And by November last year, I knew that I'd created a body of work that, if I did justice to the songs, that there would be very good reason for this album to exist. And I'm really, really glad that I saw it through and went through everything I had to go through to make it happen. It was a really challenging project. A really challenging project financially, energy-wise. The most people I've worked with in a long time, and quite a few people I've never worked with before. So, and some of them even people I didn't necessarily know that well. So there were a lot of risks involved in it. And every hunch and every feeling that I got about a singer or a musician that happened quite quickly was vindicated. Every person who performed on the record, most of what they played ended up staying on the record, and I spoke to people when they came to the studio about the songs, and it just, everybody kind of got it. People just sort of got it. I mean, to have someone like Iarla Leonard come into your record and to sing as little as he sang, but to sing it so beautifully, you know, and that's what happened with everybody. I mean, Glenn Hansard came in and just did this one song with me, but he was absolutely the right person for that song, and what he did was absolutely perfect for that song. And it was the same with everybody else who came in. Everybody just sort of got on board with the journey that's in this record, and I'm really, really, really thrilled about it, and I'm going to remain true to it and work with it for at least 18 months.
Well, for those of us that are on the listening end of things, thank you. Thank you for going through all that, because I think it's going to stand the test of time, and I am, from a listening standpoint, love it and really enjoy and think about these songs a lot, and I want to talk about that. And you answered several questions that I was going to ask you about the people that played on that, because you said that there are some people you had not played with before. Iarla Leonard probably would have been one.
Donald Lunny.
Yeah, but you had Donald, Eamon Quinn, but Glenn Hansard, Martin O'Connor.
Derek Powell.
Yeah, lots of tremendous singers and musicians, on this release, an orchestra as well. So,
yeah, lots of people who have very rich, full careers, who managed to find the time to come and talk to me about the songs. And because everybody who came, I didn't have a clear idea what anybody should do. I picked people because of my love for them and for their work, and in some cases actually asked them to choose what they wanted to sing, and in some cases I got it right, and in other cases they made other choices. But in each case, everybody brought something very rich and something beautiful of themselves to the songs, and in the end, that's what it's all about. The whole process is all about songs realizing their potential.
I think that sums it up quite well. Let's talk about, as a matter of fact, Glenn's contribution to a song I wanted to talk to you about, and that was Heartman. And I think now you dedicate this to Shane O'Neill. Is this Shane O'Neill, the businessman that just passed away in February?
Oh, how did you know about that?
Well, I know a little bit about him, but I wondered if that's who it was. And for those of us in America that may not know his whole story, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Shane O'Neill is a man who I first met maybe 6 years ago. He sort of approached me to do a charity concert because of his work with the Cello Foundation, who work with families of AIDS victims and AIDS families in sub-Saharan Africa, and his thing was always education, obviously, and health as well. Just this incredible human dynamo, really, really special guy who was a very successful businessman, but who had literally a very great heart and a very powerful soul. And I felt very cheated this year because I was only really beginning to get closer to him as a friend, and because he was busy and because I was so busy, we didn't get to meet that often. I only really met Shane maybe 5 or 6 times. But I was very affected by him and very struck by his energy and his passion for justice, and and his desire to do good was just a very powerful burning flame, and he was just a very impressive man. And when I heard his diagnosis, even in the last 6 months of his life, he was incredibly graceful and still giving, but just utterly devastated with the loss of time with his 3 beautiful children and his lovely wife. And when I decided to write Heartman, the idea of the song was that there'd been so much bad press and rightly so, about men particularly in the last years, between corruption and child abuse in Ireland with the clerical priests and just wars and corruption throughout the world, that I just had this urge last year to write a song inspired by some of the men who've inspired me. But I wanted to dedicate it to Shane, and yeah, that's it. And when I asked Glenn to sing it with me, I sure picked the right guy.
You did, and it's a noble call and a great song.
Thank you.
Your title track, or the title of the album, is taken from a song called "You Survive," which is a very intriguing, powerful idea, and came from someone you spoke of, I believe, that had survived trying to commit suicide.
Yeah. A woman I met in West Cork last August when I was out walking, and she just came to me and said, "You really need to write a song about suicide." And I could tell that she had a story to tell, and so she came to tell me her story and her experience of her suicide attempt 10 years ago and her ongoing journey in recovering from those attempts and from that impulse. Is a very, very powerful person who's now channeling her energy into working with other people to help people come back from the brink. And I decided I didn't want to write a song about suicide, that I would rather write a song in honor of the people who have survived and who continue to survive, and that's what it is.
Yeah. I think that the last little song on there, "No Big Deal," is a quiet, sweet little gem. I would suppose that you maybe wrote that with Robbie in mind, and it doesn't matter who it's written for. But I oftentimes think some of your nicest songs are just very simple, heartfelt ones, and that one, for some reason, I just thought was a song that resonated quite a bit, as simple as it is.
Yeah, thank you. I just think I've been inclined to agree with you. I think that one of the things I've started to trust as I get a little older is that I think that in some ways the best part of humanity is in the vulnerability, and I think in giving yourself permission to be a bit vulnerable from time to time and to allow yourself to express certain kinds of feelings of longing or loss without being melodramatic or self-pitying or maudlin, but just a little bit of honesty and truth about oneself. I mean, as the fella says, a little goes a long way.
Yeah.
You know, a whole album of songs like that would be really hard going. But I think to have a little moment of vulnerability and honesty on a record like that is perfectly okay for me now, and I'm very happy about it. And you know, I kind of like the way. One of the things I like about the album, which was kind of an accident because I didn't plan it, but I only realized recently that the first phrase in the album is "How am I to be?" And the very last line of the record is "It's just the way it is." And there's something very resolving about that, because so much of, I think, the journey of life is just accepting one's vulnerability, and that's part of our humanity, and I think that's what that song is about. When, you know, singing "It's no big deal" when obviously it's a really big deal, and then there's a kind of an acceptance that comes with "It's just the way it is." There's no point in fighting it. There's no need to fight it. It's just the way it is. From time to time, we experience these feelings, and they bring us to a sad little place from time to time, but in the end it's fine, and the important thing is to accept that this is part of our contract with life.
Sure, but everybody can relate to that, and so everybody Precisely. Can understand that. And I'll never forget Paul Brady, and this is going to go back to what you said about you don't think that there really needs to be more records or more songs per se, but Paul Brady said once that sometimes maybe the only poetry that some people may ever hear are the lyrics of a song. And I thought that was a very profound statement because I think it's very true. And it's the words as much as the melody or anything else that is the message. And the message is the message. If we stop talking and stop expressing these feelings, then they go unheard. And I think that would be a very empty, sad place.
I also think what he says about songs is right, because I find it much easier to take on board something that's sung than something that's said. I just think that people have less resistance to a message that's delivered through the form of a song than through even a poem, sadly. I think I say that sadly because poetry is so great, but it can be hard, if the vehicle that carries the words is important, and the way the words are sung is important, and what accompanies the words that are being sung. It's all important. It's all integral. It's what makes my job particularly interesting, because I sort of see it as three completely separate jobs, each of which has its own integrity. In other words, people choose to be just guitar players, and it's a great job, and people choose to be just singers, and it's a great job, and people choose to just be poets and write words, and it's a great job. But the bringing of that all together, those three disciplines, in one song, where you're really trying to set up an atmosphere with the music, and you're trying to create a melody with your voice in which to carry the words, and all the music and the voice, all they are really is a vehicle for the words. But if you don't get the vehicle right, then the message won't be received.
Correct, but it's true. Yeah, absolutely true. If the vehicle is not right, it'll be missed completely. I want to talk just real briefly and quickly too about Across the Breeze, because you state in your liner notes that as of April 2012, like your neighbors who want to go out and cut turf to heat their houses will be committing a criminal offense. What is that about? What happened to make that so?
As the fellow said, there's three sides to every story. There's your side, my side, and the truth. It's complex in that there is an issue. Europe's bogs are depleted dramatically. Like Holland, for example, lost all its bogs through overproduction of turf. And this has begun to be recognised in the last 20 years as becoming a problem in Ireland. So Europe, in all its wisdom and with all its computers and all its satellites, just picks out areas and says there will be no more turf cutting in these areas. And there's a way to do things, and there's an idea there that all the people who are cutting turf are doing so to make profit, and only a tiny percentage of them do it commercially. Most of the people in my neighbourhood who cut turf, they do it because that's how they heat their homes, that's how they cook their food. And they rely on the turf for their energy, for their homes. And then there is the social and traditional aspect, where you have grandfathers who taught their sons and their grandsons and granddaughters how to carry on this beautiful tradition summer after summer, year after year, and how families bonded and fathers and sons bonded. And suddenly, because of this EU directive, they're being basically criminalized, and it's a bit of a mess. And there are, where the song came from was that people approached me and asked me to write a song, and I didn't want to specifically write a song myself because I come from the center of a town. I don't cut turf myself. I burn it, but I don't cut it. So I can understand and sympathize with the tradition and the activity. with the people, but I don't exactly understand the experience, because I believe in experience more than I believe in opinion. And so I said to them, I need material, and so they gave me access to 160 letters that were written by my neighbours to the Commission for the Environment in Europe, and the letters just really, really, really moved me, and they told me an awful lot about Irish life and Irish history and Irish tradition and Irish family life, and how this was just being trampled on, and that's where the song came from, basically from the words of these people.
It's a beautiful song, and well done.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to get my head around the EU telling people they can't cut turf in their local bog when, those huge machines from Bord na Móna, just...
They haven't penalised Bord na Móna at all.
All over the place, and the machine can take out more in 1 hour than a village will take out in a lifetime. Well,
as often is the case in the world, they've gone for the weakest link.
Yeah.
Namely the poorest people in the equation. But they're strong people, and they're standing up, and they won't go away lightly or quietly.
Yep.
And rightly so.
Yep. Well, and you kind of will remind the rest of us about that, so that does not happen. So thank you for that. Well, this is an absolutely brilliant album. It's very thoughtful. It's thought-provoking. It's kind of what we expect from you, and I'm not disappointed. And thank you very much for putting that out for us to listen to.
Oh, listen, it's what I've no choice, Cindy. Nobody will give me a job. It's what I love to do, and I love it more at the moment than I possibly ever have done, or as much as I did when I was releasing Riverside and the acoustic motorbike for Warner Brothers in America. I'm really proud of this album, and I'm going to work very hard to see that as many people get to hear it as possible.
Will we have a chance to then, at some point in the next year and a half, see you over here then?
Yeah, we're talking about it, and it's beginning to look like it may be next June.
Okay. Well, we'll keep that on our calendar, and I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time and yourself.
Cindy, I'm glad we managed to make this happen. It's always good to talk to you.
All right. Listen, you take care of yourself. Happy Solstice Eve, and we will see you here hopefully in not too long distant future.
Solstice Eve. I forgot about that.
It is.
You're right. Oh, my God, the longest day of the year. Yep. It's going to be downhill afterwards. Hilarious. How the time flies.
It does. Time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like bananas.
Beautiful. Fruit flies like bananas. I love it.
All right. There you go.
Well said. See you, Cindy.
All right. See you, Luka. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.